I don't know if you're joking or not. That's a
No,
lot
no.
of people on a Zoom. That's amazing.
No, yeah, totally. Started doing this 12 weeks ago. And it's just started me monologuing for a half an hour. Do you know how hard that is? To like talk nonsense for a half an hour? It stressed the hell out of me. It's like, are we almost done?
We're about to go live on that end.
Okay.
So actually, or command tab for me.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Go ahead and go live.
Okay. Okay, just a sec. So I'm about to go live. They're going to play some music for us. Then they'll give me the signal. Then I'll sort of introduce you. Sort of. Here we go. Going live, baby. Here we go. All right. Hello, America! Welcome to Tim TV, or also known as, Happy Hour with Hankewich. Actually, already Sadie, our marketing person, is like wanting to kill herself. Okay, it's called Happy Hour with Maestro Tim. Got a great guest for you today. One of my favorite artists, a beautiful player, played with us 2 years ago. Met him for the first time then. Super easy to work with, but then I realized he had a really awesome sense of humor, kind of a really kind of twisted one like mine. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zuill Bailey, one of the great cello players. Zuill, thank you for joining me on this.
I'm joining you from a virtual Sitka, actually without hands. It'll disappear occasionally. But I'm actually from living in El Paso, Texas right now. But my backdrop is in kind of saluting Sitka, Alaska, where I spend my summers. But because of this situation,
are you there right now?
No.
No, you're in El Paso. You're like welting under heat.
Yeah. Exactly.
Got it. So how did you end up at Sitka, by the way? Because you've been doing this for how many years?
Oh my gosh, I went there as a guest for the Sitka Music Festival 2007 at the recommendation and the invitation of the founder, Paul Rosenthal, who's a violinist who studied with Jascha Heifetz. And
I've heard of him. Yeah. Pretty good violinist. Yeah.
I hear he's okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went there for that summer, and then I was invited back in 2008. And Paul asked if I would be his successor as the artistic director of the Sitka Music Festival, which was founded in 1972, which is the year I was birthed. That was my birth year.
English, me like it well. Yeah.
And I haven't even had a sip of wine yet. Oh, wait till you hear
we'll
that.
We'll get to that, yeah.
But anyway, so from 2007 on, I spent every summer there, and it gets longer and longer because, as you can see by my backdrop, which was a picture taken about 5 days ago at exactly this time of day in Sitka, Alaska, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the weather's beautiful.
Oh,
and there's a lot of space, so even if you want to social distance, you have to.
So let's put a comparison here. How hot is it in El Paso right now compared to what it would be in Alaska?
Let's see. I would imagine in Alaska it's in the high 40s, low 50s. In El Paso, I believe it was 105.
Oh my God. How on earth do you actually survive that? That's impossible.
I don't go outside.
I guess so, yeah.
I make sure to refrigerate my wine, and I stay inside.
So there you go. So more time to drink. So let's get down to the nitty gritty here, because when I reached out to you, I said to bring your wine A game. So I'll go first because I just know you're going to just outclass me. Because when you were here, I introduced you to Tracy Weber, who is the owner and operator of First Avenue Winehouse.
Yes.
And you kept her into business for several weeks. I mean, you bought a lot of wine, so you are a real serious guy here. So I brought, you said Syrah, right?
Well, I thought that would be an interesting discussion. I love all red varietals.
Okay, I brought a Chateauneuf de Pape. Yeah, no slouch. In the Rhone Valley of a region in France, blah 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 blah, or as they say in French, blah 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 blah. And it's a Syrah-ish sort of, and it's smells good, tastes like wine, tastes like some vintner's feet. I like it very much so. Yeah, so that's what I'm drinking. What are you drinking?
Well, I'll tell you several personal stories first.
First of all,
I grew up with basically a family of teetotalers. Okay. So there was no alcohol served in my household growing up. I had a lot of catching up to do in college. But when I got to college, of course, I had no money. So I didn't really do much of that in college. I began playing as a professional cellist. One of my first gigs was in Napa Valley.
Oh wow!
And one of my sponsors was Stag's Leap, and so we went to Stag's Leap for the pre-concert festivities. And I'd always had really bad wine, like you're drinking. Up to that point.
Oh, burn. Okay.
Oh,
darn.
And when I tasted this Stag's Leap Cask 23, which was what they were trying to impress me with, I not only fell in love with wine, but I really liked it. I mean, I really savored it, and I was actually drinking for taste.
So I have a nerdy question for you. Which Stag's Leap? Because there are two, right? There's the one with the stag on all fours, and then there's the stag. There was a big lawsuit between the two vineyards, right? Yes. One that was kind of it's on its hind legs, another with four legs planted on the ground. Which one?
Whichever one has Cask 23 as their feature. I'd have to go look at the bottles again. Okay, but those bottles are very pricey. And I began, like New York real estate at the time. People bragged in the 90s, at least musicians, at how little they had to pay for a great apartment in New York City. So I began searching for wine that I could afford that was as little as I wanted to pay. It's very hard to do.
Sure.
Because obviously when you pay a lot for wine, you get generally what you pay for. Cask 23 is kind of up there. So I started to get to know prices of wines and maybe what I would consider in the future for enjoying when I had a few more pennies to my name. Fast forward. In 2001, I went to the British Virgin Islands with Awadagin Pratt, who's an amazing wine enthusiast.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He has one of the great palates that I've ever seen. He gets into it with the sommeliers at restaurants all the time, and he wins. I mean, he can taste when something is corked. He knows the background. He knows the vintner. He knows the wine engineer. He knows everything when it comes to wine. So I began playing with him as a duo. We would tour, and he would always buy a bottle of wine for our dinner that I couldn't afford at the time, and he would treat the table, which was just me and him. And so I got to try even more wines. I'm getting to my story, the answer. So in the British Virgin Islands in 2001, they brought us the menu, and he sat back and looked at the menu and kind of perused it and said, "Oh, I'd like you to bring this wine out right now and open it as you're coming out." And which was kind of strange.
Right.
So the sommelier went and got it, opened it up, handed him the cork, handed him the bottle. He swished it around and said, please pour it in a decanter, and please, we'll have it at the end of our meal. This was Awadagin Pratt, great pianist speaking. I'm in shock. I saw the price. It was way out of my price range. And he said, I got this. This is something extraordinary. When the waiter walked away, he said, this must be a misprint, because they're basically selling this incredibly high-end wine at wholesale price on a restaurant menu.
Oh, wow. That's big markup usually, yeah.
Usually 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So I'll be honest, I don't care. The Penfolds Grange that he bought, which is from Australia, which is a Syrah, is considered one of the world's best wines. And at least for Syrahs, and it's legendary. And that's what we had. And I took note of it, and at the end of the meal, after the meal, we began sipping it over the next hour and a half. Oh. And it completely changed my life. So much so that, and it was such a monument to me, and I'll never forget that night, that I went on a search. This is the Penfolds Grange, and this is what it looks like.
Put it in front of you. There you go. Yep.
Right there. I went out to search for the exact birth years of my 2 boys.
Aw,
to buy them each a bottle, to not be opened until their 21st birthday. So this is one of those. And I loved it so much, I began researching it. And I run a music festival in Spokane, Washington, which is about a 2.5-hour drive. It's like San Francisco to Napa Valley, to Walla Walla. Walla Walla, Washington is Washington State wine. And so when I went wine tasting there on part of my music festival, I walked in a place called Long Shadows. And I tried their varietals of red wine. And I sat there just trying to take my time and discern between each of the grapes. And again, going back for a second, what I love about wine, beyond the fact that it tastes good and makes you feel warm and happy, is that to describe it, you use the same musical terms.
Musical terms, yes. Amen, brother.
And
yeah.
so I love to impress sommeliers and other wine aficionados by my depth of description of basically music. Yeah. And they think I'm discussing wine. So I impressed all of them, and I said, and I told them about the Penfolds Grange at Long Shadows. It was the place is called Long Shadows in Walla Walla. And the guy who was the sommelier took his head up, and he went out and he said, do you understand what our concept is here? And I said, no. He said, we choose the world's best wine engineers to create the world's best wine from our grapes. That's our thing. We take the world's best Cabernet, world's best Syrah, the world's best Chardonnay, anybody who's got that global reputation for creating the best, we brought them in as our engineers to create that with our grapes. And they brought this out to me. This is the Long Shadows sequel.
Oh, beautiful.
Created by John Duvall, who created Penfolds Grange.
Yeah.
And it's totally affordable. I mean, it's in the scheme of what a Penfolds Grange is.
Similar profile? I mean, obviously.
Very similar. It's very subtle. It's not too like jammy and sticky and gooey,
right,
and as some, I think some Syrahs can be. It's refined.
Wow.
So I of course signed up immediately for their wine club, and the major celebratory times in my life, I will try to obtain a Penfolds Grange. But for the times where I just have had a great day and really just want to feel amazing and know the depth of where I came from through wine, I drink Long Shadow sequel.
Fabulous.
That's my story.
Well, to you, sir. Cheers.
Cheers.
So while you're swilling down some of that wine, let's go to the chat room to see what everyone else is slumming with. Randy Reynolds, Cosmo tonight, very good. Kathy, of course, Tracy Weber is the best. Kathy, what habit do you have? What does Tracy sell to you? Because I know that she knows her clientele really well. Let's see here. Jeanette Welch, you're back. What are you drinking? Another whiskey sour? And yeah, good. So I'm glad that everybody is getting into the wine. And Blaine Cunningham is our librarian and principal tubist, and he named their oldest, Sophia, at the Coppola Winery in Napa on their honeymoon.
Oh, that's great.
That's right. So, I mean, yeah, wine is the tie that binds. So, I can't come close to you with my measly Chateauneuf de Pape, but I salute you, sir. Yeah,
Please.
well, no, listen, what you, so Howard Dodgen, by the way, you're a good friend of his,
Yes.
and he's a great pianist. Tell us more about him, because his star was on the rise in the mid '90s or so.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean he's still out there and doing some great work. Do tell us about him.
Sure. Well, I met Howard Dodgen over a ping pong table at a music camp in 1986. Howard Dodgen is about 7 years older than me, and he was a man and I was a child. Howard Dodgen was a specimen physically at that age, and I didn't never know why, but he was basically being primed and ranked to be a professional tennis player.
Oh, I had no idea. That's amazing.
So it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
This guy not only did that, but he was at the String Meadowmount camp because he was studying both violin and piano. He was doing both. And he was accompanying everybody on piano but studying violin. Then a couple of years later, I met him again at Peabody on a basketball court, and I had grown up at that point, so we started talking about real life stuff, and subsequently found out that he was also a championship chess player. So, in addition to being a phenomenal pianist, and I didn't know anything about the wine at that point. Is the word omniglot, is that the right word? Like someone who is
just good at everything.
At everything.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not a jack of all trades, a master of none. He's got 3 degrees from Peabody in conducting violin and piano. He's a conductor. He actually is a conductor. He cherishes and investigates and reads up on wine like that's his job. He's a championship chess player. Tennis, it's out of control. And basketball, I mean, I want to be on his team. This guy is, it does not surprise me that, and he teaches now at Cincinnati Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati, Ohio. But, he was thrust from being this multifaceted genius in all of these things to being a singularly celebrated pianist out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere. So his first Grieg piano concerto was with the LA Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl. His first blah, blah, blah concerto was with the New York Philharmonic. So it literally went from, I'm not going to say 0, but let's say 10 to 200%.
Yeah.
But Howard Dodgen would never have been happy just being a pianist. So it does not surprise me that his career has maintained, but to continue to diversify. He's been an artistic director of many festivals. He's just generally the guy you want to be around as a friend. He's one of the greatest friends a person could have, a collaborator, a guy to travel with, because it's crazy exciting. It's fun. Everywhere you go, there's something going on. And he's been my friend since 1986. So
wonderful.
And he's the artist that I've invited the most over my 20-year career of being artistic directors.
Right.
I mean, because I can invite him back 1 year as a violinist, I can be a conductor, I can invite as a food host and a curator for an evening of a soiree. I mean,
yeah, the guy's amazing.
And then our donors invite him to go play tennis after the concert. I advise against that.
Yeah, because he's cutthroat. Yeah,
he doesn't like to lose.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah,
it's brutal.
So, Mr. Executive Director, let's talk turkey here, because this thing called the pandemic going on. How has that affected your life?
A lot of good ways.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it was a shock and awe of this can't be happening.
Right.
To be very honest, I have been running around so hard as a solo cellist for 3 decades. And I've been telling my friends secretly, one of these years I need to take a sabbatical, because I'm just tired from the
You know,
travel.
2 years ago, you said that to me. I remember this very same conversation. Absolutely, yeah.
But the problem is with sabbaticals, you have to have the foresight and the planning to basically, in my life, to plan for 2 years ahead of how you're going to feel, because everything's planned so far in advance. So when it all went down, I was in Miami, Florida, when it was really going piping hot. It was March 12th. And I flew to West Virginia, and basically everything started being canceled. And I got home as fast as possible, and I have not left since. Now, when I say I haven't left home since, that sounds normal, but I have not been home for this stretch of time since high school.
Yeah.
Which has made me ponder many things. What is home? What does home mean? The safety and the security of really having face-to-face friends. Most of my colleagues were, I saw them when I saw them and I'd call them up, but they weren't real face-to-face relationships. I got to spend much more time with my two sons. Everything became very real.
Yeah.
And I started realizing at that moment that I had a lot of noise in my life. So what I have done in these past 4 or 5 months is I have cleansed.
Good for you.
I have reduced. So as a cellist, I've welcomed it because I've learned new repertoire. I have sat back and really practiced and didn't have the anxiety and the crazy brief prep time that I've always had to get something ready in 4 or 5 days.
Right.
As far as my festivals are concerned, just like you, we've had to we've had to move forward with technology.
Sure.
No one would have been doing these things from March backwards. But now we collectively have a new gear that is going to be really in shape to parallel to live concerts when they come back as we knew them. And I don't think they're going to come back as we knew them. I think they're going to come back different. I
suspect you're right. What you said resonated with me so much. Maybe a month ago, I was having lunch out in a park, and I saw a father with his young boy having lunch, and I was thinking to myself, and I said to my friends, I hope we don't forget this moment. We need to slow down. Slowing down is okay, and in fact, I kind of worry what will happen when we ramp back up, where we will lose these special moments.
But I will disagree with you a little bit. I don't want to ramp back up. I think a lot of people, once they've seen that not only can they survive and function and be happy with balance in your life,
right?
I think people are going to continue to want balance. I was projecting because I've never lived a balanced life.
Understood.
But now I do not want to go back on the road for 300 days a year. I will not go back on the road for 300 days a year. I want to be home.
So tell me about your son. 2 years ago, you were buying a cello for him, and he was, getting into the music business. So, that must be kind of weird as a professional and a father. So, what's going on in his life these days?
Well, I really appreciate you asking and remembering all of those special things that were in my life. But it is an interesting time for people in college and those age groups, and I feel that they're going to be the lucky ones in the scheme of the future of music because they're the most flexible people. I'm not speaking for you, but I know how I've done it, and for me to try to figure out how to redo it is going to be a little bit of a fatigue factor.
Sure. Yeah.
My son is already open to technology, to taking music outside the box, to crossover. None of that stuff was brought up when I went to school and or applied even 5 years ago.
Right.
So I'm in that situation being affiliated with the University of Texas at El Paso, UTEP, as the director of entrepreneurship, that I am now discussing with this future generation, my kid as well as other people, that the future is really actually bright because it's a fresh start.
Right. Yep.
So that's what we're talking about now.
Sure.
Not only cello, he plays the cello, and that's wonderful and everything.
Right.
But the cello is just the flashlight that shows the path.
Oh, that's a good analogy. That's great. Yeah. Time to pause, have another sip on your wine. Let's go back to the chat room. Also, again, I want to thank Tracy Weber for helping me out with my wine choice. Those of you who don't know Tracy, by the way, she is spectacularly awesome. Not only good at what she does, she and her husband Ron are foodies, and she knows how to pair wine with food like no other. And one of my favorite people. Anyhow,
I will add to that.
Yeah.
Because when I walked into that shop, one thing that I noticed that I've never noticed in another shop is that she listened to what I like.
Yeah.
And she guided me in the world in which I know wine, versus saying, you got to buy this either because it's on sale or because I like it. She's a real people's person.
She believes in what she does, and she's really good at it. God bless her, because she keeps my habit going just fine. Oh my God! Wow! A lot of people have been chiming in here. Hello, Siobhan. Siobhan is our personnel manager, fabulous artist and flautist. Yeah, Kathy, she agrees with you, Zuill. She doesn't want to go back either.
At least not the way it was.
By the way, a big compliment to you, Andrea Ellert, a violist who plays with the orchestra a lot. She has a cello student and loved hearing you play when you performed. So, it's funny. Do you realize, are you conscious of the fact that when you're performing, you are actually touching individual lives, or do you sometimes just see it as another gig, or this whole faceless auditorium of people? I mean, are you aware of how personal your art is and how direct it is when you perform?
That's a great question. I'm aware of how important art is. I'm aware of how important that art and music continue to remind us, when on whatever level we are at that time, that we're human. We remember how we feel much more than what we did.
Right.
So while I'm playing, I am always seeking this new feeling or this new inspiration or these new goosebumps. And I know for a fact, because it is just destiny, that someone, even if it's just one person, is going to have a moment that may just be based on the soundtrack of what we're producing for them, that they're never going to forget. Because I personally have had my life changed by artistic experiences when I was an audience member. So my fingers are crossed, and it's really nice to hear someone say that because of our concert that they felt that. But I would never be in music if I didn't also feel what they're feeling.
So last week we had Michael Doherty here, who is a Cedar Rapidian. He's a native here. And one thing that I even told him this last week. One thing I admire about him so much is he never forgot where he came from. He always visits. He always has a connection with his roots here, and it shows up in his music every once in a while. So you do a lot of premieres. People write a lot of music for you. This Tales of Hemingway that Michael wrote for you, I got a feeling, I think it's one of his strongest pieces. And I think it's probably going to outlast him. I think it's going to be performed, no offense, Michael, 30, 40, 50 years after you're gone. Did you know that because he wrote it for you.
Yeah.
And you wrote, and you recorded the first recording of it. When you first heard it, did you think it had legs to it? And then let me follow up with that with the second question is, how much of that is your daily bread now in concertizing?
Oh, that's great questions. Absolutely, I had no clue it would be a success. I had not heard, and you have to remember, again, looking back, it seems so clear, but he was changing things and morphing things up until seconds before the first concert. Right. Before the first concert, which was the one recorded 2 days before, I had never heard the orchestral part. So I had no spectrum of knowing how it was going to feel. I also don't know, most people are so fearful of things that aren't familiar. With this large scale work, I didn't know if they're going to be in shock and awe. I didn't know if it was going to be this. I didn't know. I had no clue. I enjoyed playing the piece. I looked around with the orchestra while I was playing, and they enjoyed playing the piece. I think there's so many facets to this piece that are successful, because a lot of people, including me, occasionally listen with their eyes. And when you're at a concert, a live concert, and you see the people on stage having a ball, you want to be a part of that. And you're sonically also with that. I totally agree with you. And I say this because I've probably played this piece 60 times with orchestra already.
Whoa!
60.
Listen,
now,
listen, for some of our audience who don't follow what we do, cheers, by the way.
Yeah.
A new piece, you're lucky if it gets performed twice.
Lucky.
And so you've done this 60 times already. That's
but
amazing.
The weird part was, of course, the bandwagoning is all over the world and happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when it won the 3 Grammys,
right,
it kept being programmed, but I'd already done it 17 times before the Grammy Awards.
Yeah.
I mean, it already had the truth is that we had the consortium, and so there were I don't know, about 12 orchestras that believed in Michael's product, that wanted to invest in his future and his piece. But going back to what you said, I got to witness this, and it is what it is. But so many people said, Michael, you're at a different level now. Mm-hmm. What's happened? He goes, life.
Yeah. And
I loved that.
Yeah.
Because you grow every experience. He goes, yes, I knew when I heard it and I felt it that something had changed. And I'm happy to ride his coattails and to promote his piece and to be a part of this history. I totally agree with you. This piece is already in the firmament of the repertoire.
Yeah. And your name is attached to it. I mean, listen, not every cellist says, hey, that piece was written for me. Hey,
Well, I've already had some other cellists programmed to play it, which was a weird time because I played it so many times, and people have come up to me and asked, is that weird, or is it hard to let go?
Yeah.
And I quote Rostropovich.
Right.
Rostropovich, because he commissioned 175 new works, he said, once I premiere it, it's taking a bird and saying, now the world take it.
Right.
And I can't just be the only one playing it. So to see now other people championing it, I mean, this was 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's a serious piece. It is now a real...
It's all, yeah. And so the good news is that other cellists are playing it. And so, I am, that is a gift that keeps on giving.
Yep. Hey, Ed, can you bring up that photo? So there's a photo of you, me, and Michael after our performance of the piece. You won't see it on your screen, but people who are tuning in on Facebook will. And it's kind of like the before and after picture of the Hair Club for Men. There's a lot of forehead between Michael and me, and then there's you and your Fabio locks.
Oh, stop it.
That was a fun evening. So you've done this piece. Keep it up for a while, and we'll just talk over the picture.
Yeah.
So you've done this piece a lot, so 60 times.
And it's equally, here's the funny one. So I went on tour of South Africa, and I wanted to bring something American. And so this was 2 years ago, and I played about 14 recitals, and I featured it on the second half with piano, because Michael wrote the piano part.
Right.
And equally successful.
Well, he prides himself on being a great orchestrator, which he is. But I remember asking him, said, do you sometimes get into the trap of composing something where the piano sound is so perfect, it's hard to orchestrate? I mean, Chopin, you can't orchestrate Chopin. It's just so in tune with the piano. So it's not very often you can play a piece that works just as well for piano as it can for orchestra. I mean, Ravel did it a lot, but Michael also is kind of that kind of guy.
Well, Chopin is interesting. It goes back to being very smart also. Michael is incredibly smart and forward-thinking and entrepreneurial. A lot of the great composers from the past would write variations on themes of other famous composers because they wanted to take advantage of something that was successful.
Right.
They would also write reduced works to be mobile. It's very expensive to put on a symphony season, as you know. But Chopin, his first, both piano concertos were not being played, so he orchestrated them for quartet and piano.
Yeah.
Very smart, and by the way, very
better.
Successful.
Yeah, actually, in many ways, it's better. Yeah.
I totally agree. And basically, all of Schumann's music works better in an intimate format. Look, great is great.
Yeah.
But Michael boiled his massive symphonic experience down to the bones. I always use the word down to the bones. The structure's there, the support is there, the excitement is there. And again, that he inspired me as an artistic director, as well as a programmer for my own recitals, to think different.
Right.
Because we don't have to just keep spinning the same stuff. And this goes back to what we're going to be doing with the social distancing and the reduced orchestra stuff. We can have even higher quality,
right?
Just with more flexibility and more innovation.
Well, you're also going to be exploring a lot of repertoire that sort of gets overlooked. I mean, you are either a chamber music person, which means string quartet. Cheers, buddy. String quartet, or quintet, octet at most, or a symphony orchestra. There is, that only touches. I mean, there's so much great music for 13, 20, 25, 40 musicians that hardly gets programmed just because of certain economic pressures and just sort of logistics of putting it on stage.
I'll just say it, a lot of promises to use all the orchestral musicians at one time.
You're right. As a per-service orchestra, you will never see a Mahler symphony, a Bach, Brandenburg Concerto, and a Mahler symphony, because I have to hire all those musicians, so damn it, I am going to work them all to the bone and beat them like a rented mule. Yes, absolutely.
But that goes back to, and again, we're not getting into this.
Certainly not the beating of the rented mule. That's
no. But the idea being, let's just say that you were able to program with your orchestral musicians more concerts, less people on stage, which means you can go into different venues.
Absolutely.
You could quadruple the amount of concerts you give if people were able to reduce and move, because how many places can you get 80 to 90 people on a stage?
Right. Where you play determines what you can play. And people would think that's limiting, but it's actually freeing. So before I sign off here, I'm going to go back to our chat room to see if anybody has any pressing questions for you. Let's see here. Mary Phelan, you were born and raised in Spokane, Washington. You know that. So, Zuill, by the way, is Washington only known for its Pinot Noirs, or is it branching out?
Oh no, I think that's not Washington. Oh, I see. Eastern or Western Washington.
Right.
I think they do Pinot Noir, but no, the Walla Walla Valley, the valley does it all, and they do it beautiful. I mean, they have. Oh my God, I'm spacing now, but they've got several historic to them wines that Leonetti is what I was thinking about. Leonetti is basically, and Woodward Valley Old Vine. These are like the Mondavi type innovators of Walla Walla as they were for Napa. But they do everything. And by the way, I'll just say it because I'm not on payroll, but you can find the same bottled quality of wine in Washington State for at least $15 to $20 less, same quality, because you don't have the Napa Valley brand on it.
Sure. Yeah.
So you can get a $15 to $20 bottle of Washington State wine that you'd be paying $40 for in Napa Valley, just because you're paying for their overhead in Napa Valley, which they don't have yet in Washington State.
So let me ask you this question. Just because you love music doesn't mean you want to learn how to play the cello. Does this mean you ever want to run your own vineyard?
Oh, well, do you think I'm not asked? No, and they're like, here's the response. Don't go into the wine business to make money.
Yeah, no kidding. So many people I've noticed when I went to Napa, I mean, a lot of these vineyards were owned by people who were running it as their hobby. They made their money totally somewhere else, and this was a vanity project for them. So I feel badly for the poor farmer actually trying to make a living growing and making wine.
But that's kind of like, and I'm not going to relate it to classical music, but one of the entrepreneurial talks I speak about is, don't go into classical music to be rich and famous.
Certainly not classical music. Wait, finish your thought, because then there's another story I want you to tell. Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that it's called a passion project. And by the way, when you have a passion project, it's really not about the money. It's just about survival. Right. So if I could, in a parallel life, be a part of a vineyard and not have it destroy me financially, but I could enjoy all the things we're talking about and be part of the creative process of innovation and artistically pulling these things together. Absolutely, I'd be involved in that. But that goes for so many things.
Sure.
I also equally enjoy coffee. So would I have to move to Bogota or like to like have a coffee farm? I love this stuff. And so because of music, I kind of determine my life based on loves and then responsibility.
Right.
In that order, because
okay. So did you give your son the same advice? Did you give your son the same your cellist son? Did you give him the same advice?
Well, I the difference between me and my son and me and a student talking is that I'm living by example.
Yep.
And I tell my son everything. And I tell my students everything. I live an unvarnished life.
Right.
I try to tell them the realistic part of everything. And again, if you can find what you love and make it what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And you won't see it as work.
Right.
And money is kind of sort of negated because you kind of realize that for most people, they work to pay for what they love to do after work.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is called a hobby.
Yeah, that's awesome. So before we sign off, I want you to tell our audience your story about your Grammy and a sort of humbling experience when you were talking to a friend or a friend of your son's, I think, about someone else in your neighborhood who may have or may not have had a Grammy.
Oh, that's a great story. I'll make it as quick as possible.
Before you do that, let me just set it up. I never asked the question, do you know who I am? Because I am afraid of the answer. So, please, but the floor is yours, sir.
This is a two-pronged funny story. So my son, I wasn't able to take a guest, so I took my son to the Grammys, and he was 15 at the time. And I got him a suit, I got his hair cut, I made him, so it was all about him because, no one knows if you're going to win anything or not. It was a life experience for me to bond with my boy. And we were so psyched to be those people, to walk out of the Grammy Awards with a trophy. And so he went back, and at the time he was living with his mom in San Antonio. And he went to school, and he was wearing the Grammy shirt, and he had the Grammy hat that he bought and all this stuff. And one of his close friends, like 4 days later, he went over to his friend's house and he said, my dad won a Grammy Award. And his friend said, that's great. And my son, whose name's Mateo, said he didn't quite understand that he didn't get it. And he said, that's a big deal. And he goes, yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah, it sounds like a big deal. And then my son said, well, your mom's a musician, isn't she? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, has she ever won a Grammy Award? And he goes, well, let's go check in her office upstairs. And they went upstairs, and they're like 13 Grammy Awards. This was a Dixie chick. and he's like, oh. And then, wah, wah, wah. He's like, I felt stupid. And so this was one of the Dixie chicks at the time. So the second story, which is I love even more, was like, I don't know if it was a few days before or a few days after, but I was collaborating with Nava Perlman. And my son went up to Nava Perlman, whose dad is Itzhak Perlman. And he goes to Nava, my dad won a Grammy Award. And she goes, that's amazing. He so deserved it. Oh my God. The stories behind that debut and the CD were insane. Can you believe it? He goes, yes, it's amazing. Has your dad ever won a Grammy Award?
Oh, ouch. Oh, my good God.
Here's the funny part. She goes, I don't know, 20 or 22, but I haven't really seen them because they're at his house. And he goes, well, have you ever been to the Grammy Awards? And she said, no. And he goes, well, I have. Finally. And then he told me these stories.
That's
and
awesome.
I said to him, so what's the end result of this? He goes, I'm not bringing it up anymore.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So you just I said, and this is my life lesson with him. I said, no matter what's happening, you never know who you're talking to. Because he could have talked to a lot of people that would have never had a comeback. But he talked to the only two he talked to were the wrong people to be talking to.
That is awesome.
I think Nava even said, has he begun using it as a doorstop yet?
Yeah.
Like,
What?
a doorstop?
That's amazing. Brother, thank you so much for saying
Oh my gosh.
yes. I miss you, man.
miss you too.
Listen, the performance was great. I had a blast. But to find that you were kind of like a kindred spirit with a really sick sense of humor like me, God bless you. And when I reached out to you, you actually said yes. I am so grateful that you did this.
Life is not a dress rehearsal.
No, it's not. That's
And
right.
you know what I read just the other day, which I'm going to tell everybody, this is very important to know. The regrets people have later in life is what they didn't do or what they didn't say.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the biggest regrets, whether you have money, whether you have fame, whether you have success or happiness or failure or whatever. It's what you don't express
Right.
that you regret. And so these days, during the pandemic,
You're right.
of
We've been
course.
given a great gift. This is the time, isn't it? Yeah.
like, what do we have to lose? I mean,
Right, yeah.
see it. I mean, come on. You don't have to be a jerk,
Right.
but you can say and create conversations. I'll tell you what, Tim, I've had conversations in intensity that I have not had in years, and I have adored them.
Wow.
Going back to what I'm not going to do again. I'm not going to go back to being, this careful. Live it. Be
Yeah.
present. Live it to the moment.
That's awesome. We're going to continue our conversation, and they're going to fade us out with a little bit of music. I think this is the last movement of Tales of Hemingway, and next week we have Mark Stouffer Hunter, who in the Hall of Mirrors. Actually, we're going to change the location for our next conversation. But I got to tell you, this has always been great. It's been a real blessing to have you in my life, even though it's been 2 years ago, man. I still haven't forgotten about that moment, and I still haven't forgotten about you, and I want to thank you so much. So we're going to sign out with some music, and we're going to continue with a few things here. So off air.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, buddy. Yeah, cheers. Actually, if you put it close to the microphone, it's a bigger glass. It's like
Bigger.
that.
Yeah. I've got this thing behind me. Which
That's
is
right.
working.
So